Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the stiff wool of a U.S. Army uniform in the early 1940s, the kind that somehow manages to feel scratchy, heavy, and weirdly comforting all at once. You wake before the sun, because in this world the sun is not the authority your sergeant is, and he believes the best way to greet the morning is with a roll call shouted through a fog thick enough to make you question whether you're standing in France, England, or the world's largest malfunctioning steam bath. You try to straighten your back, even though you slept on what the army generously calls a cot, but what your spine would describe as a firm suggestion to give up. Your breath fogs in the cold, and you realize yet again that no one warned you. World War II would feel less like a movie, and more like camping with 40 men who all snore and have identical haircuts. Somewhere down the line a guy coughs, another mutters a prayer, and someone else whispers something about wishing he'd become a dentist instead. Honestly, not the worst idea. You shift your boots, trying to warm your toes, which haven't felt like toes since Tuesday. A mainstream historical fact slides into your mind. U.S. Soldiers really did face constant dampness, rain, mud, morning mist, especially in European campaigns. The cold wasn't dramatic, Hollywood cold. It was just stubborn, persistent cold, the kind that made you think the universe had selected you specifically for a personal weather vendetta. You probably won't survive this, at least not in a way your laundry would approve. Someone cracks a sleepy joke about trading his entire GI paycheck for 5 more minutes of sleep. Another guy claims he once slept standing up during roll call, and historians still argue whether he actually did, or whether the story just grew legs after a long night. That's one thing you notice out here. Rumors evolve faster than military tactics. Your stomach grumbles, loud enough that the man next to you raises an eyebrow. He's the kind of guy who always looks suspiciously awake. The one who somehow shaved perfectly, even though no one remembers seeing him with a razor. You suspect he's actually a time traveler from the future, or at least someone who stole a razor from supply and is now guarding it like it's the Holy Grail. The sergeant marches past, checking names, barking corrections, and managing to look warm despite the fact that everyone else is turning into human popsicles. He announces the day's tasks, which sound vaguely like enthusiasm torture combined with healthy cardio. But you've learned not to question it. If you're breathing, you're already doing fine by World War II standards. A quirky tidbit drifts through your mind as you stand there. Some soldiers swore that slapping bacon grease on their boots kept them dry. Others claimed it attracted cats. No one could prove either theory, but you kind of hope someone wrote it down in a notebook somewhere. Future archaeologists would have a field day. You stretch, trying to shake off the tightness from another night of half sleep. Your body is adapting, but it's the strange mental rhythm that shocks you. Days blur, mornings come too quickly. Even the way you tune into the smallest sounds, the scrape of boots, the whistle of wind through canvas, shows how much the army rewires your senses. It's a quiet transformation that doesn't feel dramatic until you really think about it. As you stand in formation, you notice how the fog curls around the camp, swallowing tents like an overeager ghost in a 1940 seconds cartoon. You hear distant trucks starting, someone banging a metal pot, and a choir of groans from guys trying to stretch out backs older than they actually are. The air smells like wet wool, cold dirt, and burnt coffee. A combination you will spend the rest of your life being able to identify in your sleep. Someone behind you clears his throat and mutters, "If the Allies don't win this, maybe the fog will." It gets a few tired chuckles. Humor becomes currency out here. Sarcasm is its highest denomination. Not a single soldier laughs loudly. You're all too tired for that. But the quiet ripple of amusement softens the edge of the morning. Your mind drifts briefly homeward as the sergeant continues roll call. You picture warm kitchens, soft beds, people who never once shouted 10 hut before breakfast. The contrast almost feels unfair, like the universe is dangling the memory of comfort just to test your emotional durability. But there's something else here too. A strange pride that clings to you as stubbornly as the dew on your jacket. You're part of something larger than yourself, something messy and chaotic and too big to explain, yet steady enough to keep you standing in this chilly line with the same group of exhausted, sarcastic men. You shift again as roll call nears the end. The fog thins slightly, revealing faint outlines of tents, trucks, rifles leaning against posts. The waking world expands around you, still quiet, still heavy, but good enough for now. You inhale deeply, letting the cold air sting your lungs. This is your morning. This is the start of another long, unpredictable day. You're tired, hungry, and not entirely sure where the next hour will take you. But you're here, standing in a line that stretches far beyond this field, linking you to millions who did the same thing. Men who woke up, shivered, complained, whispered jokes, and tried their best to find warmth in fog that didn't care either way. And the day is only beginning. You shuffle out of formation with the rest of the guys, your boots slapping wet earth as everyone drifts toward the mess tent in a slow-moving zombie migration. The fog is still clinging to the ground, giving the whole scene an almost dreamlike quality, like you're walking through a low-budget fantasy realm where the only treasure is a lukewarm cup of army coffee. And, honestly, you'd fight a dragon for that coffee right now. The mess tent looms ahead, a big, sagging canvas that somehow manages to look both inviting and mildly threatening at the same time. You duck inside, instantly hit with a wave of smells. Burnt grounds, metal trays, yesterday's onions, and something vaguely sweet that probably shouldn't be sweet. The army doesn't do mystery food on purpose, but it happens anyway. Historians still argue whether the scent is actually sugar or just optimism cooking itself. Your stomach growls with the kind of tragic desperation that makes the guy in front of you laugh. "Don't worry," he says. "The coffee's hot enough to melt your insides. That's something." He's not wrong. One sip, and you'll either wake up instantly or lose the top layer of your tongue forever. It's a gamble, but you stopped having standards around week 3. You clutch your metal tray, moving forward inch by inch. The line is its own social ecosystem. The early riser who complains about everything. The quiet guy who eats like he's in a cooking competition. The comedian who narrates the food like a sports announcer. And in the left corner, weighing in at 9 ounces of regret, we have today's scrambled eggs. He kills every time you suspect he was a radio host before the war. A mainstream historical fact floats in your mind. U.S. soldiers often relied heavily on their field kitchens, which had to improvise meals under impossible conditions, mud, cold, and frequently moving fronts. So when the food actually tastes like food, you appreciate it. When it doesn't, well, that's when creativity matters. You've seen guys trade chocolate bars for butter, butter for jam, jam for an extra scoop of potatoes, potatoes for a dry cigarette, and a dry cigarette for basically anything. The wartime economy is beautifully flexible. You reach the front just as the cook plops something yellowish onto your tray. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't need to. He knows you'll eat it. He's confident in that way only a man who serves 300 meals before sunrise can be. Another scoop of something brown lands beside the yellow, followed by a biscuit with the texture of a heavy-duty paperweight. "Don't break a tooth on that," someone behind you says, classic mess tent humor. As you move to the coffee urn, you hear a quirky tidbit from the cook. "Some divisions get fresh eggs today, not ours." He laughs. You can't tell if it's a joke or a tiny cry for help. Apparently some units did get fresh eggs occasionally, but only when supply lines behaved. This was roughly never. Coffee, however, remained the one consistent companion strong enough to pass as paint thinner, but dependable. You fill your tin cup, watching steam curl upward like it's trying to escape. You take a sip. Yup. There it is, that internal organs scorching, soul-awakening shock that somehow makes you feel more alive, and more dead at the same time. You find a seat at a long wooden table already crowded with half-awake soldiers. You squeeze in, metal tray clanking. The guy across from you gives you a nod, then immediately starts dissecting his biscuit like a scientist. "If I can crack it with my fork," he says, "today's going to be a good day." The fork bends. Bad omen. Someone else cracks a joke about wanting to open a restaurant after the war, but only if he can ban all powdered eggs in a 3-mile radius. Another guy bets that in 50 years, people will still be arguing about whether army coffee counted as a beverage or a mild weapon. Honestly, he's probably right. While you eat, you notice something. Despite the fatigue, despite the cold, despite the food that barely qualifies as neutral, there's something warm here. The conversations overlap. Jokes echo. Someone is telling a story about home. Someone else is trying to trade a cigarette for a second biscuit. Historians still debate whether soldiers bonded more over hardship or humor, but you're pretty sure the truth lies somewhere in between the powdered eggs and the burned beans. Food becomes a ritual, a tiny anchor in a life that keeps shifting under your boots. You take another bite of the yellowish stuff and think, okay, that's not terrible. Maybe your standards have been lowered into the earth. Maybe you're just hungry. Maybe both. Someone to your right nudges you. "Hey man, you alive?" "Barely," you answer. "That's enough." Mess tent success. You finish your meal, down the rest of your molten coffee, and feel the warmth seep through your fingers like a small blessing. Outside, the fog is lifting. The camp is waking. Trucks, boots, voices the growing pulse of movement. You wipe your tray, hand it off, and step back into the daylight. Breakfast wasn't glamorous, but it was fuel. It was normal. It was something shared. And in a world where each day feels unpredictable, that's enough to carry you into whatever comes next. You step away from the mess tent with a hint of warmth, finally spreading through your fingers. But the moment you glance down at your gear, your straps, your webbing, your helmet, you're reminded that comfort is temporary. Your equipment, on the other hand, is forever. Or at least, it feels like it's forever. It clings to you like a very needy, very heavy pet that refuses to let go. You tighten one strap, loosen another, shift your rifle on your shoulder, and wonder for the 100th time how the U.S. Army managed to design gear that is simultaneously essential and mildly cruel. You trudge toward your tent, feeling the familiar bounce of canteens, ammo pouches, and that tiny shovel strapped to your back that looks innocent until it smacks you in the spine during a march. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. World War II American soldiers carried roughly 60-90 pounds of gear on average, depending on the mission. Not because the army hated you personally, though. It often felt that way. But because every bit of it played a role in keeping you alive. Helmet, entrenching tool, gas mask, ammo, rations, poncho, extra socks, first aid pouch, canteens. You basically become a mobile hardware store. A very tired one. You reach your tent, kneel beside your pile of equipment, and start the daily ritual of checking everything. It's almost meditative, in a "this determines whether you live or not" sort of way. You run your hand over your M1 helmet. It's cold, dented, and smells faintly like metal and yesterday's fear sweat. But it's iconic, dependable, and heavy enough to double as a bowl if you're desperate enough. You lift your rifle, checking the strap, peering down the sights, making sure everything clicks the way it should. It's strange you've only been a soldier for months, maybe a year, but the feel of this rifle has already become more familiar than half the things you grew up with. You could probably disassemble it blindfolded, which you actually did once, because a sergeant thought it would build character. Historians still argue whether that sergeant had a sense of humor or just an overwhelming amount of free time. As you reorganize your packs, you rediscover the small items that feel almost personal. The extra socks you guard like gold, the folded picture you keep tucked behind your canteen strap, the tiny tin of foot powder you ration more carefully than your chocolate. There's even that random piece of string you keep because, at some point, someone told you string solves everything. A quirky tidbit you once heard flickers through your memory. Some soldiers swore that stuffing newspaper into their boots kept their feet warmer and dried sweat faster. Others said it made the boots smell like sadness. You haven't tried it yet, but the idea is tempting on cold mornings. You sling your pack onto your shoulders, instantly regretting every meal you've ever enjoyed, and adjust the straps until your body reluctantly accepts the weight. There's a familiar pinch near your collarbone where one strap always digs in, no matter what you do. At this point, you're convinced the strap is alive and simply enjoys your suffering. One of your buddies walks past, slapping his gear into place with practiced annoyance. "You know," he says, "I think my pack gets heavier every night, just out of spite." "Mine too," you answer. "It's basically evolving." "Yeah, another week, and it'll grow arms." You both laugh quietly, because it's better than crying, and because humor is the only known antidote for military-issued discomfort. You turn your attention to your boots. Sturdy, hard-working, surprisingly decent when broken in, but until then, they're like strapping 2 wooden crates to your feet. You tap the heel, brush off mud, and wonder how many miles you'll march today. Too many, probably. The army loves long walks. If World War II had a mascot, it would be a worn-out boot lying sadly in a puddle. As you finish adjusting your gear, you notice the way it subtly shifts your posture, pulling your shoulders back, bending your knees, changing the way you move. It turns you into a different version of yourself, one built for endurance. You didn't sign up to become a pack mule, but here you are, evolving beautifully. You step outside again, the weight settling into place as naturally as your own shadow. The camp buzzes with movement. Soldiers running drills, officers giving orders, the low rumble of a truck engine coughing to life. You feel the drag of your gear with each step. But you also feel something steadier, like carrying all this equipment is a reminder of your purpose, however heavy it may be. A breeze moves through the camp, lifting the edges of your jacket. You inhale the scent of damp canvas, oil, dirt, and the faint metallic tang of your own rifle. It's not pleasant, but it's familiar. Familiar is good. Familiar keeps your heart from racing too fast. You hitch up your straps one more time. Everyone does this constantly, as if the gear might magically lighten if you just adjust it enough and start walking toward the day's tasks. Every clink of metal, every shift of weight, every tug of fabric ties you to the moment. This gear owns you. But strangely enough, you own it too. The world is unpredictable. Your equipment is not. In its own heavy, unromantic way, it becomes a kind of stability, one you carry into every march, every trench, every uncertain hour. And it's not getting any lighter. You barely make it 10 steps before the bark of an order slices through the air. Training time. Because apparently, even in the middle of a global war where danger lurks everywhere and your nerves already feel like violin strings, there is always room for more drills. Endless drills. Eternal drills. Drills so repetitive you start questioning whether the army secretly measures your sanity for sport. You join the line forming near the edge of camp, your boots squelching in mud that seems to multiply overnight. Everyone looks equally thrilled, meaning no one looks thrilled at all. There's a universal expression on every soldier's face. I woke up for this? But that's the unspoken rule here. You trained yesterday? Great. Do it again. And tomorrow. And the day after that. Welcome to the infinite loop. A mainstream historical fact your mind dredges up. World War II. American soldiers trained constantly, even on active fronts. Drills weren't a beginning stage. They were a forever stage. Marching, shooting, crawling, reacting, repeating. The army believed muscle memory could save lives, and sometimes it did. But right now, all it saves is your ability to curse internally with remarkable creativity. Your sergeant, a man who looks carved out of oak and hard decisions, strides up and announces the first drill, weapons handling. You try not to sigh too loudly. You've performed this drill so many times, your hands could practically do it by themselves, which honestly might be an improvement. Your fingers are still half asleep from the morning cold. You kneel, lay out your rifle, and begin disassembling it with practiced precision. Click, twist, slide. A few guys mutter jokes to keep the mood alive. Last time I did this, my rifle tried to escape. Mine actually did escape. It filed a complaint. Historians still argue whether that rifle ever returned home. You smirk without looking up. Humor makes the motion smoother. Or maybe it just gives your brain a distraction so you don't scream into the mud. As you clean each piece, you feel the weight of responsibility settle in your chest. This isn't just a drill, it's survival rehearsal. And though you're exhausted, though the repetition dulls your thoughts, some small part of you recognizes the necessity. Fear freezes thinking, but training keeps your hands moving when your mind hesitates. That's the real magic here. Still, you wouldn't mind a little less magic and a little more sleep. You reassemble your rifle, snap the final piece into place, and stand as the sergeant calls for the next drill, low crawling across a field of damp grass. Perfect. Exactly the activity you dreamed of doing today. You drop into the dirt, elbows sinking into the wet ground, and begin inching forward like a slug with commitment issues. Your buddy on your left grumbles, "You know, I joined the army for adventure." "And?" you whisper. "This feels less like adventure and more like a wet carpet." You nearly snort. A third guy chimes in. "At least we're mastering something valuable. I'm becoming a professional worm." You continue crawling, feeling your jacket soak through and your gear dig into your ribs. Nearby, someone curses as their helmet falls over their eyes. Another soldier gets stuck behind a tree root and mutters that the root is clearly in league with the Axis. Crawling is many things, but graceful isn't one of them. A quirky tidbit crosses your mind. Some World War II training camps used loudspeakers to play simulated machine gun fire during drills. Sometimes, they were real machine guns firing over soldiers' heads safely high, but terrifyingly loud. And sometimes, the noise was just a private who had perfected his rat-a-tat-tat impression. You're not sure which is more unsettling. Your sergeant blows a whistle, and everyone rises to shaky knees. Mud streaks your sleeves, your pants, your boots, pretty much everything except your earlobes, but give it time. You stand, panting slightly, wiping muck off your face with the sleeve of a jacket that's already given up on being clean. Next drill. Formation maneuvers. You shuffle into rows, aligning shoulder to shoulder as commands ring out. Left turn, march forward, halt, right turn, march again. You do it over and over until your sense of direction dissolves like sugar in hot water. Historians still argue whether the army invented some of these commands just to see if anyone was awake enough to notice. The sergeant paces the front line, scanning for mistakes. He corrects someone's stance, adjusts another guy's grip, grunts approvingly at one formation, then tears into another with the precision of a disappointed schoolteacher. You stand straighter instinctively whenever he looks your way, every soldier does. It's a biological response at this point. As you complete another maneuver, you notice something subtle. The drills, as dull as they feel, sync everyone together. Your movements match those around you. Your pace falls into rhythm. Your breathing aligns with the group. It's like the entire unit becomes a single organism, shaped by repetition and necessity. This realization doesn't make the drills more fun, but it does make them feel meaningful. Even the sarcastic part of your brain has to admit that. After an hour that feels like a week, the sergeant finally calls for a short break. You collapse onto an overturned crate, gulping from your canteen. The water tastes like metal and faint chlorine, but it's cold, and that's enough. Your buddy sits beside you, rubbing his shoulder. Think any of this will help when stuff gets real? You shrug. Probably. Or maybe we'll just look really professional while panicking. He laughs, nearly choking on his water. That's the spirit. Someone farther down the line wonders aloud whether training is ever actually done, and the guy next to him answers, "Yep, when you're discharged, maybe." You lean back, catching your breath, muscles throbbing with that dull ache that never really goes away. Despite everything, the mud, the crawling, the endless commands, you feel steadier than when the day started. More prepared, more alert, more synced. Training may never end, but neither does the strange sense of growing into the role. One drill at a time, one shout at a time, one weary step at a time. And the day, unbelievably, is still just beginning. You're barely finished catching your breath from training when someone shouts the two words capable of flipping the mood of an entire unit. Mail call. It moves through the camp like electricity. Guys who looked half dead a second ago suddenly sit up straighter, like someone pumped new batteries into their souls. You feel it too, that small spark of hope, ridiculous and fragile, but powerful enough to override mud, cold, exhaustion, and the faint smell of wet wool that seems permanently attached to your uniform. You drift toward the gathering crowd, boots dragging slightly, but your heartbeat picking up. Mail isn't just mail out here, it's the closest thing you have to a tether to your old life, your real life, the one with kitchens and sidewalks, and people who have no idea what entrenching tool means. The mail clerk sits on an overturned crate, like a king presiding over a very impatient court. He holds a bundle of envelopes tied together with twine, thumbing through the stack as he reads out names. Everyone leans forward. Everyone listens like their entire future depends on whether they hear their own name. A mainstream historical fact slips into your mind. In World War II, letters were the primary link between soldiers and home. No phones, no email, no video calls, just ink and paper. And depending on where your unit was, those letters could take weeks, even months, to reach you. Sometimes they arrived out of order, sometimes they didn't arrive at all. But when they did, it felt like opening a tiny window back into humanity. You stand there, trying not to look too desperate, even though half the men around you absolutely have the same desperate expression. The clerk calls a few familiar names. One guy grabs his letter and immediately presses it to his chest, like it's a warm loaf of bread. Another tears his open right there, eyes moving quickly, lips silently shaping the words. Someone else gets a whole bundle of 3 letters and instantly becomes the camp's wealthiest man. You wait and wait. Finally, your name. You feel it hit you like a warm gust of air. You step forward, take the envelope gently, almost reverently, like it might crumble in your hands. The paper is creased from travel, the ink slightly smudged, your name written in handwriting you know better than your own. You step away from the crowd and find a quiet patch near a stack of crates. You sit, boots stretched out, and break the seal. The faint smell of paper drifts up, a smell that feels like comfort, familiarity, and memory rolled into one. The letter is simple, full of ordinary things. Someone you love tells you about the weather, the grocery store, who got a new job, who's expecting a baby, which neighbor finally painted their fence. Mundane things, gentle things, things that have absolutely no place in the mud and chaos you live in now, which is exactly why they matter so much. You read slowly, absorbing every line like it's medicine. You smile at a joke that wouldn't be funny anywhere else. You read a sentence twice just because you like how it feels. And somewhere in the middle of it, a little sigh escapes your chest, one you didn't realize you were holding. Around you, the rest of the unit is equally absorbed in their own worlds. One guy wipes his eyes while pretending he has something stuck in them. Another chuckles at a note from his kid. A third folds his letter carefully and tucks it into a pocket over his heart, as if he's putting something precious back where it belongs. And then there's the other side of mail call, the guys who didn't get anything. Their faces fall for half a second before they force a smile and shrug it off. Maybe tomorrow, they say. Someone nearby gives them a cigarette, or hands them a newspaper clipping, or offers to share a letter from home. World War II units created a kind of emotional socialism if someone was hurting. The rest tried to fill the gap. A quirky tidbit pops into your head. Some soldiers carried little good luck tokens inside their letters. Pressed flowers, coins, recipes, lipstick marks, scraps of fabric, even perfume that somehow survived the journey. And some GIs swore those tiny keepsakes protected them, though historians still argue whether belief mattered more than superstition. You reach the end of your letter, your eyes lingering on the signature. A sudden ache catches you off guard, not painful, just deep. You fold the letter carefully, smoothing the edges, and slide it into the safest pocket you have. You'll read it again later, probably many times. You lean back against the crate, letting the letter warm you from the inside. For a moment, the war feels far away. The muddy boots, the endless drills, the heavy gear, all of it fades just a little. Because now you're not just a soldier standing in a cold field. You're someone with a life, a history, a home waiting. You feel human again. Connected again. Nearby, one of your buddies waves a letter in the air and calls out, "My sister sent cookies." Everyone immediately perks up. "Real cookies?" someone asks. "Like, with sugar?" "Yeah," he says, "but I'm rationing them." You stare at him. "Rationing them?" He grins. "Yeah, 1 cookie per friend." "Dibs," you say instantly. He laughs. Historians will debate whether you call dibs before I finish the sentence. The moment feels light, warm, something like normal. You tuck your letter deeper into your pocket and stand, stretching your legs, feeling a strange buoyancy settling under your ribs. Not joy exactly, just a steadiness you didn't have an hour ago. Letters do that. Words do that. And with that small weight of home resting against your chest, you head back into the day. You trudge back toward the edge of camp, letter still tucked safely in your pocket, when someone yells the 2 most deflating words in the entire army vocabulary. Dig in. Of course, foxholes. Your glamorous, mud-themed vacation home. You follow the others to a stretch of uneven ground that looks freshly rejected by nature. The soil is half mud, half rocks, half mystery, yes, that's 3 halves. Because this dirt defies mathematics. You drop your gear, grab your entrenching tool, and accept your fate. The little shovel unfolds with a metallic clack that sounds way too cheerful for the misery it's about to inflict. You jab it into the ground. It hits something solid, maybe a buried boulder, maybe a fossilized dinosaur, maybe the frozen remains of hope. Historians still argue whether soldiers dug more dirt or more existential dread during World War II. You put your weight into it, boots slipping slightly in the mud, and begin scooping out the earth inch by stubborn inch. Your buddy next to you grunts. Why does the ground always feel like it's personally offended by us? You shrug. Maybe it is. Maybe the dirt and the army are in cahoots. Wouldn't surprise me. As you carve out a shallow pit, you're struck again by how surreal foxhole life really is. You train in them. You rest in them. You hide in them. You occasionally eat in them. They become tiny slices of survival, carved straight from the earth. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind. Foxholes were essential in World War II, especially in Europe, where artillery and air raids could turn open fields into nightmares in seconds. A hole in the ground could save your life. Not glamorous, not heroic, just dirt and sweat, and cramped muscles, but life-saving nonetheless. Your hole is starting to take shape now. Not a masterpiece, more like a mud bowl with ambition. You deepen it, widen it, and eventually slide inside to test the fit. It's snug, damp, uncomfortable, perfect. You sit with your back against the cold wall of packed earth, boots stretched toward the opening, and stare up at the grey sky. A drop of water lands on your cheek, then another. You groan. Of course. Rain. You pull up your hood and try to relocate your optimism, which seems to have wandered off. Your friend across from you wiggles down into his own foxhole like a weird, soggy prairie dog. You think they'll let us name these? What would you call yours? The deluxe suite. You snort. Mine's the mud spa. 5 stars. Someone further down the line shouts, "Hey, anyone find worms yet?" "Why?" Another replies, "My foxhole's lonely." "Oh good, he's gone feral." You lean back, letting the earth cradle your spine in the least comfortable way possible. But in a strange way, the foxhole wraps around you like a protective shell. A little grim, a little awkward, but undeniably safe. It's remarkable what you get used to out here. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some soldiers carved tiny shelves into their foxholes, or stuck playing cards into the walls, or used spent ammo casings as makeshift hooks. One inventive GI, supposedly, mounted a photo of Betty Grable on a stick and used it as morale support. Historians still argue whether that foxhole provided superior emotional stability. You look around your own space and consider decorating. Maybe a leaf, maybe a rock, maybe your canteen, which is currently judging you from the corner. But for now, the only decor is mud, mud, and more mud. A low rumble sounds in the distance, artillery drills miles away. The sound rolls over the landscape like distant thunder. A reminder of why you dig, why you train, why this hole matters. You shift slightly, testing the depth again. Still good, still safe, still deeply uncomfortable. Your sergeant walks by, inspecting each foxhole with the solemnity of a man judging a baking competition. Too shallow, too wide, too sloppy. Finally, he gets to yours. He nods once. Not bad. You feel absurdly proud, like you just earned a medal in the category of least terrible hole. Once he moves on, you settle deeper, elbows, tucked in, rifle propped beside you. You breathe in the smell of damp earth, rich and heavy, almost grounding. Out here, dirt becomes something you trust, something predictable, something solid to cling to when life feels anything but. Your foxhole fills with quiet moments, a few raindrops, the squelch of someone trying to stand up in mud, soft conversation drifting from nearby holes. For a moment, the world feels still, protected. And that's when you realize something important. Foxholes are uncomfortable, yes. Cramped, yes. Muddy, absolutely. But they also represent one rare, precious thing in a soldier's world. A place to breathe. A small circle of space where you can pause, let your shoulders drop, and exist without orders for a tiny sliver of time. You exhale slowly, letting the earth hold you. For now, this is home. You climb out of your foxhole after the rain tapers off, brushing mud from your sleeves, though at this point, brushing mud off is more symbolic than effective. The sky has shifted from washed-out grey to a pale, tired blue, the kind that looks like it hasn't slept either. Someone whistles the start of a marching cadence, and immediately your stomach drops. Because you know what's coming. Marching. Long, endless marching. The army's favourite hobby. Before you can groan, an officer calls for everyone to form up. You sling your gear over your shoulder, your pack already digging into that familiar spot just below your collarbone, and fall into line. Your boots squish into the softened ground as you stand shoulder to shoulder with your unit, all of you staring into the distance like condemned men at dawn. "Nice weather for a walk," your buddy mutters. "Is it?" You reply. "No," he says flatly. "Absolutely not." Then the command comes. Forward. March. And forward you go. Your boots hit the ground in steady rhythm. Thump. Squelch. Thump. Squelch. The kind of rhythm that worms its way into your bones and stays there long after the walk is over. At first it feels manageable. The air is cool, the ground soft, the pace moderate. But after 10 minutes, the straps on your pack start gnawing into your shoulders like tiny determined rodents. After 20 minutes, your feet start sending firm complaint letters to your brain. After 30 minutes, your brain stops reading them. Mainstream historical fact time. U.S. Soldiers in World War II marched constantly, sometimes 10, 15, even 25 miles a day, sometimes more. Not glamorous hero-style marching with flags and music, just tired, dusty, trudging toward whatever the day demanded. And the marches weren't always about movement. Often they were training drills to build endurance, discipline, and group cohesion, which is a nice way of saying, we're going to walk until you question all your life choices. The scenery blurs into a mix of trees, muddy paths, and distant hills. You zone out, falling into that strange marching trance where your body keeps moving, even though your mind has drifted off somewhere else entirely, maybe home, maybe the future, maybe the thought of a warm slice of pie that doesn't exist anywhere except your imagination. The guy behind you starts humming a tune from home. Someone else quietly joins in. Then another. It's off-key, uncoordinated, and slightly painful but weirdly comforting. Marching songs weren't just tradition, they kept you moving when your legs wanted to mutiny. A quirky tidbit arrives. Some soldiers swore by sticking cardboard or flattened tin into the soles of their boots for extra support. Others stuffed socks under their arches. One guy supposedly shoved a slice of bread under his heel before a long march. Historians still argue whether that was genius or just culinary blasphemy. Your pack shifts again, and you wince. You try adjusting the straps, but the pack has entered its sentient evil creature phase and refuses to cooperate. The ground slopes upward, and a collective groan rolls through the unit. Even the trees seem to judge you. Why? Someone pants. Is it always uphill? Because the army hates joy, another replies. No, says a third, gasping. The earth is round. This is payback. You smirk, because at this point even bad jokes feel like lifesavers. As the climb gets steeper, your breathing deepens. Sweat trickles down your back. Your boots feel heavier, like someone snuck rocks into them. Maybe they did. Wouldn't put it past the army. Your thoughts drift because there's nothing else to do. Marching becomes a portal into strange mental territory. You remember things you forgot you remembered. You imagine conversations that never happened. You rehearse your next letter home. You wonder whether your foxhole is filling with water right now. And then, just when you think your legs might stage a full rebellion, the terrain flattens. You feel the collective sigh ripple through the group, like you all just aged 5, 2 years and then reversed it. The sergeant calls a short break. You drop onto a fallen log, yank off your helmet, and run a hand over your sweaty hair. The air tastes metallic from the canteen water you gulp down. Someone hands around a pack of gum, precious treasure. 2 sticks left. They ceremoniously split one in half, because in the army, thou shalt share gum. It's practically scripture. One guy rubs his knees, another massages his shoulders, a third just lies on his back staring at the sky like it personally betrayed him. Then the whistle blows again. Break over. Of course it is. You stand, groaning softly, and fall back into line. The march resumes. The rhythm returns. Thump, squelch, thump, squelch. And as your feet move under you, the monotony becomes something else strangely meditative, almost calming, in that I have surrendered my fate to the universe way. Historians like to debate whether soldiers hated marching more for the physical pain or the mental drain. You're pretty sure the answer is yes. Both. All of the above. But there's something comforting too, in the steps, in the shared silence, in the unspoken acknowledgement that everyone around you feels the same ache, the same fatigue, the same stubborn push forward. The day wears on, the path stretches, your legs ache, but you keep going not because you want to, but because the unit moves as one, because marching, in all its dull misery, creates a strange bond, one foot in front of the other, forever. Eventually, the sergeant calls a final halt. You sag with relief, the kind that sinks all the way into your bones. The march is done. Your legs survived. Your boots are now legally classified as puddles, but you're still standing. You limp back into camp after the march, legs wobbling like 2 exhausted sticks someone glued to your torso. You're tired down to the marrow, but there's one thing stronger than fatigue out here, the gravitational pull of your buddies. Because, as the day stretches on, you realize something quietly profound. You don't survive World War II alone. You survive it in a cluster of muddy, sarcastic, half-awake men who become something closer to family than you ever expected. You drop your gear near a row of tents and catch sight of a couple of guys already sitting in a circle on overturned ammo crates, hunched over a pack of cards. They wave you over. The invitation is casual, unspoken, but somehow warmer than any blanket the army has ever issued. You sit, knees cracking like old branches, and someone deals you in. The game is simple, some hybrid of poker, boredom, and chaotic house rules they keep changing mid-hand. You don't even care. Your brain's too fried for real strategy, but the familiar voices swirl around you, softening the sharp edges of the day. A mainstream historical fact floats up. World War II units, especially infantry squads, formed bonds so intense that psychologists later studied them to understand group cohesion under extreme stress. Men joked, fought, shared, argued, protected, borrowed, stole, forgave, and relied on each other in ways civilians rarely experienced. Out here, your battle buddy isn't optional. They're your lifeline, literally. One guy in your group, Jonesy, starts telling the story again about how he once outran a jeep on foot, a physical impossibility, a scientific insult. And yet he retells it so often and so dramatically that the legend has now grown its own mythology. You grin. Pretty sure the jeep was parked, Jonesy. No, he says, deadly serious. It was coasting downhill. Oh, well that changes everything. Everyone laughs, and it's the good kind of laugh, the deep, weary, full-body kind that unwinds something inside your chest. Nearby, another group is having a heated debate about whether canned pears count as dessert or despair. Two men are trading socks like they're high-value stock options. Someone else is showing off a watch he bought from a local for the suspicious price of one chocolate bar and a handshake. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some soldiers collected unit mascots, dogs, cats, goats, even ducks. One famously adopted duck allegedly marched alongside its unit and quacked at officers. Historians still argue whether it improved morale or discipline, but the duck definitely had opinions. You glance around camp, spotting every kind of bond forming in real time. Two men sitting shoulder to shoulder sharing a single cigarette. Another pair arguing over who snores louder. A trio singing badly, very badly, while cleaning their rifles. Someone passing out gum. Someone else taping a playing card to his helmet for luck. Your sergeant walks by, trying to look stern, but even he can't suppress a tiny smirk at the sight of Jonesy dramatically reenacting the great Jeep race of '44. The sergeant clears his throat, and everyone instantly pretends to be doing something useful, but he waves a hand. Carry on, he says quietly. Which, from him, might as well mean, I needed this too. You look down at your cards and realize you've completely lost track of the game. The guy next to you nudges your shoulder. You in or folding? I thought we were still dealing, you say. The table erupts in laughter. Someone pats your back. He's delirious. Marching broke him. You roll your eyes but can't help smiling. These guys have seen you at your worst. Muddy, angry, hungry, panicked, half asleep, fully asleep, talking in your sleep, and once, in a moment you'll never live down, trying to put your boot on the wrong foot. But they've also pulled you through every miserable stretch of this war. Because here's the truth, no training manual mentions. You don't fight for abstract concepts. You fight for the person marching next to you. You fight because they're fighting. Historians still debate whether camaraderie or discipline held World War II units together. You know the answer. It's sitting around this crate, misplaying cards, teasing each other, and sharing the last stick of gum. As the game drifts toward chaos, the banter thickens. Someone brings out a harmonica that should have been declared a weapon years ago. Another guy tries balancing his helmet on his knee. Someone else starts theorizing how long it would take to dig a tunnel back home using only their entrenching tool. I'd get at least 10 feet before giving up, one says. 10? Another replies. 5. Tops. 3. You say. Everyone nods in agreement. 3 feet is ambitious. The sky dims into early evening, and the group begins to thin as guys drift off to various chores. But the warmth lingers, the kind that stays tucked inside your ribs, even when the cold wind picks up again. You stand, stretch, and sling your pack over your shoulder. Your muscles groan, but your mind feels steadier than it did this morning. Because even out here in mud, in exhaustion, in uncertainty, you've got people. People who turn misery into comedy, fear into courage, strangers into family. You take a step back toward camp with the quiet certainty that whatever tomorrow brings, you won't face it alone. Not now. Not ever. The warmth of camaraderie settles into your bones, but it doesn't get to linger long. Because out here, comfort never stays. It's like the army has a sixth sense for detecting when morale rises above mildly miserable and decides that's the perfect moment to shake things up. You're adjusting your gear near your tent when the alarm cuts through the air sharp, metallic, unmistakable. A single shout follows it. Incoming drill! Move! Instantly, your body reacts. Your mind barely catches up. Feet moving, hands grabbing your rifle, heart thumping like someone pounding on a door inside your chest. You don't know yet if it's a drill or the real thing, and that's the point. World War II wasn't polite enough to give you warnings, so the army doesn't either. You sprint toward the nearest defensive position, boots slapping mud, your pack bouncing like an uncooperative toddler strapped to your back. Your buddy shouts, "You think this one's real?" "No idea." You yell back, "Cool, cool, love the clarity." You drop into a shallow trench, thankfully not the foxhole spar suite from earlier, and brace your rifle against the edge. Others slide into position beside you, breathing hard, eyes wide, adrenaline snapping through them like static. A mainstream historical fact sparks in your brain. Soldiers often had to respond to sudden alerts, especially in Europe and the Pacific, where surprise attacks could come from artillery, aircraft, or shifting enemy lines. Drills were intentionally unpredictable because the real thing always was. The sergeant's voice echoes, "Stay low, watch your sectors." You press closer to the earth, the dirt cool against your cheek. Your pulse thrums in your ears. Your breath comes in quick bursts. The air feels charged, like the world is holding its breath with you. Then, nothing. For a long, stretching moment, nothing. Someone whispers, "Think this is a false alarm?" You answer, "If it is, I'm suing the army for emotional distress. Good luck with that." Minutes crawl by. A bird chirps. Someone sneezes. Another guy coughs loud enough to startle himself. The tension is thick, electric, unpleasant, like sitting in a dentist's waiting room, except the dentist might drop bombs instead of dental tools. A quirky tidbit floats into your thoughts, uninvited but oddly fitting. Some soldiers in World War II claimed they could sense incoming danger like a sixth sense that tingled right before artillery hit. Others joked that their danger sense was just stomach problems caused by army rations. Historians still argue whether intuition played a real role or if fear simply sharpened the senses in unpredictable ways. You shift slightly, adjusting your grip. Your fingers feel too tight around the rifle, but that's normal. Everything feels too tight when you don't know what's coming. The silence stretches to its breaking point. Then the sergeant calls out, "Stand down, drill. Complete!" You exhale so hard your lungs nearly collapse. A wave of groans, complaints, and relieved curses washes through the trench. "Great," someone mutters. "I aged 10 years in 3 minutes." "3?" another says. "I'm basically a grandfather now." You nod. "Same. Get me a rocking chair." You climb out of the trench, wiping dirt from your face. Your hands shake just a little, not from fear exactly, but from that massive adrenaline dump your body now has to process. It feels like your nerves are buzzing, like your muscles are vibrating, like your heart is saying, "Hey, next time, can we not think we're about to die before dinner?" But here's the thing you realize as you walk back toward camp. As awful as the suddenness feels, these moments matter. They drill instinct. They teach your hands what to do when your mind freezes. And someday, soon or not, you might need that split-second reaction. Your buddy pats your shoulder. "Hey, you good?" "Yeah," you reply. "Just awake now." "Same. My soul left my body for a sec." "Where'd it go?" "No idea, but I hope it writes home." You laugh, but it's the shaky kind, the kind that releases tension more than amusement. The sergeant walks by, looking oddly pleased. "Good response time," he says, which in sergeant language is basically a warm hug. You keep walking, your boots sinking into the damp earth with each step, the world slowly returning to its usual rhythm. The men around you seem lighter now, talking more freely, cracking jokes half under their breath. There's something bonding about shared panic, odd but true. Historians still debate whether fear sharpened soldiers or broke them. You think it did both sometimes in the same afternoon. But today, right now, you feel strangely proud. Because even without certainty, even without warning, you moved, you reacted, you held your ground. As the adrenaline fades, a deep, hollow weariness settles. In its place, your shoulders drop, your breathing evens, and the camp, muddy, noisy, irritating as ever, feels a little safer than it did an hour ago. The drill is over. You survived the surprise. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice says, "You'll handle the next one too." After the drill, the camp slowly exhales. The tension lifts like steam off a hot pan, drifting upward and dissolving into the grey afternoon sky. You feel it too, that jittery echo of adrenaline fading into something softer, heavier, and strangely hollow. You rub your eyes, stretch your shoulders, and think maybe, just maybe, the rest of the day will be quiet. But quiet in World War II doesn't feel peaceful. Quiet feels suspicious, like the world is holding its breath, like something is waiting just beyond the tree line, just out of sight, just out of sound. You try to shake off the feeling as you wander toward a supply crate someone's turned into a makeshift bench. You sit, adjusting your helmet and letting your legs rest. Your buddy, Thomas, drops down beside you and sighs in a way that says, "I have given up on the concept of comfort." "Finally," he mutters, "a minute without yelling." You nod, or marching, or digging, or crawling. He squints at the horizon. "Think it'll stay like this?" You open your mouth to answer, then close it again, because you have absolutely no idea. Quiet moments in the war are like soap bubbles, delicate, short-lived, and suspiciously pretty. Around you, camp settles into a strange stillness, the kind where every sound becomes louder simply because there aren't many. The distant creak of a truck axle, the flap of a loose tent canvas, the muffled conversation of two guys playing cards inside a tent, the clink of someone cleaning their rifle with rhythmic care. A mainstream historical fact floats up. Many World War II soldiers reported that the eerie silences between battles were often more stressful than combat itself. After enough time, on the front, the human brain starts expecting danger, anticipating it like a reflex. So when nothing happens, your instincts go into overdrive trying to fill in the blanks. You sit there, feeling it. That twitch under the skin, that strange internal hum, that hyper-awareness that makes every twig snap sound like an omen. A gust of wind blows across the field, lifting dust and carrying the scent of damp earth. Somewhere far off, a dog barks. Someone inside a tent coughs. A pot clangs in the mess area. "Too quiet," Thomas murmurs, narrowing his eyes. You nod, suspiciously quiet. "I hate when it's like this." "We all do." Then he leans back on his elbows. "Still better than marching." You snort. "Barely." He grins. "Okay, barely." The quiet grows thicker, like fog without the fog, like the world is wrapped in cotton. You shift on the crate, your gear creaking as if even your equipment is bored. A couple of soldiers across the yard sit on their helmets, quietly smoking in synchronized gloom. And then, because the universe loves dramatic timing, a crow lands on a wooden post nearby and lets out a single, loud caw. Everyone in a 20-foot radius jumps. One guy yells, "Not funny, bird!" Another clutches his chest. "You trying to kill me?" You rub your forehead. This place is making us jumpier than popcorn. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some World War II units believed crows or ravens were signs of upcoming danger, superstition borrowed from old folklore. Others joked they were just bored birds judging soldierly misery from above. Historians still argue whether soldiers made the superstition serious or just leaned into it out of boredom. The crow gives a very unimpressed look and flies off. "Good riddance," someone mutters. After a few minutes, the stillness becomes almost soothing. Not quite relaxing, but something you can settle into. You watch the horizon, the long swath of trees swaying gently. For a moment, you let yourself breathe fully, slowly, deeply, the way you forget to breathe when your nerves are braced for anything. A soldier nearby lies on the ground, hands behind his head, staring at the sky as if expecting it to tell him a joke. "If nothing happens today," he says, "I'm writing home that I had a great time doing absolutely zero." Another replies, "Oh sure, brag about it. Tell them how thrilling the breeze was." The first guy nods solemnly. "I will. I'll write. Dear Mum, today I survived a gust of wind." You laugh under your breath. That's the thing about quiet eventually. It becomes funny. Even comforting. You settle deeper onto your crate, letting your shoulders slump. For a moment, you remember home. A porch, a soft chair. Sunday afternoons where the biggest threat to your peace was a neighbor mowing the lawn too early. The memory hits with a gentle thud. Nice, but distant. Like looking through a window that's a million miles wide. Thomas nudges. To you. You drifting? Yeah, you say softly. Just thinking. Dangerous habit. Tell me about it. You both sit there, absorbing the slow minutes. No alarms, no commands, no drills. Just time stretching gently forward. Historians still argue whether these quiet gaps preserved a soldier's sanity or aggravated it. You think the answer is yes. Both. Maybe it depended on the day. Eventually, your breathing steadies. The weight in your chest eases. A little warmth creeps into your limbs. The sky shifts toward early evening, painting everything in a muted gold. And just when the quiet finally starts to feel real, a distant boom rolls across the fields. Not close, not dangerous, but unmistakable. Everyone instantly turns toward the horizon. Thomas groans softly. So much for peace. You stand up slowly, sling your rifle, and feel the world sharpen back into focus. The quiet is gone. The waiting is over. The distant boom fades into the air like a heavy exhale, and before anyone can decide whether to panic or ignore it, someone shouts the second most anticipated phrase after mail call, "Chow time." You swear there's a cosmic joke here, fear, followed immediately by food. The army never misses a chance to keep your nerves and your stomach equally confused. You fall into line with the others, feet dragging, mind halfway between hunger and suspicion. The mess tent looms ahead like a giant, khaki-colored promise or threat. Hard to tell yet. The scent wafting out is somewhere between edible and scientific experiment. But at least it's warm. Inside, the cooks have arranged another lovingly chaotic buffet of World War II cuisine, meaning metal trays, giant ladles, boiling pots that hiss ominously, and food that looks as though it's seen things. The guy in front of you mutters, "If this is beans again, I'm filing a formal complaint." Someone behind you laughs. With who? God? Preferably, he says. He has. Better customer service. You inch forward until you can see today's spread. Beans? Check. Meat that may or may not be meat? Check. A vegetable that died valiantly long before it hit the pot? Check. And miracle of miracles, canned peaches. You hear 3 separate gasps of wonder. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. C rations were the standard for you. S. Soldiers' canned meals meant to be nutritious, though no one could agree if they were actually food. Beans, meat and vegetable stew, biscuits, chocolate bars, powdered drinks. Soldiers joked the rations were designed to outlast the sun. Some probably did. You grab your tray and slide it along, each scoop of food landing with a plop that echoes judgment. The cook slaps down a serving of something brown and says, "Don't ask what it is. Just eat it." You nod solemnly. Wise counsel. A few men ahead of you. Someone is having a crisis. This biscuit is harder than my helmet. Trade. You? A guy offers. Why would you want it? To test my hammer. You take your tray to a long table and sit with your usual crew. Everyone stares at their meals like archaeologists examining a mysterious artifact. Eventually, someone breaks the silence. Well, bottoms up. You take a bite. It's not bad. It's not good either. It's simply present. Your buddy nods approvingly. Hey, that's better than yesterday. Low bar, you reply. The lowest. Across the table, Jonesy, resident, optimist, or delusional man, depending on the day, announces, "I'm telling you guys, I actually like C rations." The entire table goes silent. You narrow your eyes. Blink twice if you need help. "I'm serious," he insists. "I like the consistency." "Consistency of what?" He shrugs. "Metallic sadness?" Everyone laughs. Even the cook across the tent smirks. A quirky tidbit floats up. Some soldiers collected specific ration cans like ham. And lima beans, infamously known as ham and mother, well, the army censors wouldn't approve of the nickname. Others hoarded chocolate bars or cheese spread for trading. There was even a black market for the most desirable items, like those canned peaches everyone is currently guarding like diamonds. You spear a piece of something and chew thoughtfully. It tastes like salt, nostalgia, and mild regret. But food is food. Calories are calories. And out here, warm meals become tiny anchors that hold you steady. As you eat, conversations drift around the table, soft and familiar. I swear I saw a mouse in the supply tent today. Lucky. At least he's getting fresh rations. You think we'll get eggs this week? No chance. Eggs fear the army. Someone opens their can of peaches, and a golden glow practically shines out of it like the Holy Grail. 3 men lean closer, transfixed. You gonna share? One asks. The peach owner pulls the can closer. Not, unless you give me your next 3 chocolate bars. A fair offer, honestly. You finish the main portion of your meal and sip the instant coffee. A liquid that tastes like burnt hope, but does incredible things for your alertness. You gulp it down anyway, feeling your insides warm. Then comes the ritual. Trading. Someone slides a biscuit across the table. Another offers gum in exchange for cheese spread. The guy behind you whispers, "Hey, I'll swap you this deviled meat for your sugar packet." "No deal," you say. "I'm not risking my digestive system for deviled anything." Food isn't just sustenance out here, it's economy, bonding, entertainment, and emotional support rolled into one, served with a side of questionable gravy. You stand, returning your tray, when a boom echoes again in the distance. Softer this time, not alarming, just there. The cooks barely glance up. The men continue eating. This is the war's strange rhythm. Quiet, noise, quiet, food, noise. Again. Keep going. Historians still argue whether soldiers remembered the meals fondly or with horror. You think the answer is both. Because right now, even with the weird stew, you feel calmer. War fades a little when you eat. Even rats know that. As you step outside the tent, wiping your mouth with your sleeve, you breathe in the cool evening air. Your stomach is full. Your limbs feel a little warmer. And somewhere deep inside, even if you won't admit it out loud, you feel grateful. Not for the food, not for the coffee, but for the fact that, for a brief moment, you didn't have to think about anything else. And that is its own kind of survival. You step out of the mess tent feeling slightly more alive than before, your stomach full, your body warmed, your spirits hovering somewhere between functional and I could nap standing up. But as you walk across camp, a new realization hits you with the subtlety of a brick. You smell terrible. Not a little terrible. Not, "I skipped one shower." Terrible. No, this is the fully immersive World War II soldier experience. A blend of sweat, mud, gun oil, canned meat fumes, and something you hope is just dirt but might be despair. The army doesn't exactly offer luxury spa packages. Hygiene in World War II is an adventure, a gamble, a constant negotiation between you and the laws of physics. You head toward a row of water barrels and makeshift washing stations, really just buckets, tins, and wishful thinking. A couple of soldiers are already there, sleeves rolled up, splashing water onto their faces with expressions of profound betrayal. "Water's freezing," one mutters as he dunks his canteen cup. "Everything is freezing," another replies. "Warmth is a myth." You grab a small tin basin, scoop some cold water in, and take a breath. This is going to be unpleasant. You splash your face, and instantly your brain turns into a block of ice. Your skin tingles, your eyes water. You inhale sharply like someone shoved your head into a snowdrift. Refreshing. You choke out. Your buddy looks over. "You look like you just saw God." "I think I did. He told me to invest in wool socks." A mainstream historical fact surfaces. World War II soldiers struggled constantly with hygiene. Showers were rare luxuries, sometimes weeks apart, so most relied on cold water, small kits, and a lot of improvisation. Some units built makeshift shower rigs out of barrels and pipes, but most days you just made do with whatever water you could find. You scrub your hands, then your neck, then try to tackle the grime on your arms. The water is so cold it feels personal. Every splash is like an insult. Nearby, someone lifts his shirt and winces. "Is this a rash or just dirt?" Another man peers. "Both? Can't wait to write home about this." You shake your head, dipping your canteen cup back into the basin. The water has now turned a shade you politely describe as not great. You dump it, out, refill, and stare at your boots. They're caked in mud so thoroughly it's doubtful there are actual boots underneath. A quirky tidbit pops into your mind. Some soldiers swore that rubbing their socks with foot powder before marching prevented blisters, while others insisted it just made their feet smell like mint-flavored regret. Some even used their helmets as wash basins, though the sergeant frowned on that. A few men still did it anyway. You remove one boot slowly, carefully, because you're not convinced your foot is still inside. Your sock is damp enough to qualify as a freshwater ecosystem. You wring it out, watching muddy water drip onto the ground. Your buddy next to you holds up his own sock like it's a cursed relic. "Smell this," he dares. "No," you say instantly. "Why not?" "Because I value my life." The men around you crack up. You grab a bar of army-issued soap, the least appealing soap on earth, smelling vaguely of chalk and disappointment, and try to wash your socks. The soap lathers reluctantly, as if protesting its involvement. You wring them out again, hang them on a nearby rope, and hope the wind will dry them before next century. Then you tackle your shirt. It's stiff with sweat and mud, and trying to wash it in a tiny basin feels like trying to shampoo a bear with a teacup. Someone behind you pours water over his head with a mess tin and yelps loud enough to startle a nearby bird. "Cold?" another soldier asks. "Cold?" he snaps. "It reached into my soul." You shake your head, amused, as you scrub a smear of dirt from your face. At least you're not alone in your misery. Hygiene is a group activity here. If one man suffers, everyone joins. The communal suffering builds morale. Or insanity. Historians still argue which. Once you've done all you can, which isn't much, but it's honest effort, you pour the remaining water over your hair. It drips down your neck, numbing your spine. But the shock wakes you up a little. You towel off with the world's scratchiest fabric, put your shirt back on. It's now only 70% gross instead of 140%, and lace your boots again. They squelch. They always squelch. Thomas wanders over, sniffing the air dramatically. You smell. Slightly less human, he observes. "Thanks, means a lot." "Don't get used to it," he says, slapping your shoulder. "By tomorrow you'll smell like a wet foxhole again." You grin. "Promise?" Your group gathers their things, hanging damp socks, shirts, and bandanas anywhere the sun might decide to help out. The camp smells like soap, mud, sweat, and faint hope. Hygiene out here isn't glamorous. It's not relaxing. It's not satisfying. It's just necessary. It's a constant battle against dirt, cold, and the slow erosion of dignity. But as you stand there cleanish, refreshed-ish, slightly less sticky, you feel better, lighter, more human. And that's enough for today. You're still air-drying from your frigid bath, rubbing warmth back into your arms, when an officer strolls through camp, calling out an announcement that instantly makes everyone perk up like prairie dogs. "We're moving, passing through a local town. Stay sharp, stay respectful." A ripple of whispers spreads. Passing through a civilian area means two things. 1. A break from staring at mud. 2. A chance to see actual people living actual lives, something that feels almost mythical out here. You sling your gear over your shoulder, fall into formation with your unit, and begin the slow walk toward the outskirts of the nearby village. The closer you get, the more surreal it feels. After days, sometimes weeks of seeing nothing but soldiers, tents, trucks, and trees, the sight of rooftops and chimneys and laundry lines waving in the wind is almost dreamlike. Thomas nudges you as you approach. "Look at that," he whispers. "What?" "Chairs." You squint. "Yep, chairs." "Haven't seen a real chair in 2 months." You nod solemnly. A majestic species. As you step into the first narrow street, the smells hit you. Wood smoke, bread, dust, faint traces of cooking. Real cooking. The kind that doesn't involve rations or powdered anything. It feels like walking into a memory you forgot you had. A mainstream historical fact drifts up. U.S. soldiers in World War II frequently passed through towns in Europe, France, Belgium, Italy, and beyond, where interactions with civilians ranged from warm hospitality to tense caution, depending on the area's recent battles and loyalties. For many soldiers, these encounters were grounding reminders that life still existed beyond trenches and front lines. A few children appear first, peeking around doorframes. Small faces, wide eyes, shy curiosity. One girl waves timidly. A soldier ahead of you waves back with exaggerated enthusiasm, earning a giggle. Another kid runs alongside the column for a moment, before darting away at his mother's call. You can't help smiling. It's impossible not to. There's something deeply human about that brief connection. A woman leans out a window, offering a soft smile and a basket of apples. She hands them to soldiers passing beneath her one by one, her gestures gentle but hurried. You and Thomas each get one. Fresh fruit? He whispers, staring at it like it's gold. We're blessed, you reply. You bite into the apple. It's crisp, sweet, and shockingly delicious, almost painfully so after weeks of canned everything. You close your eyes for a moment, savoring the taste. It feels like reminders of home and normal life wrapped in a single bite. But not every interaction is easy. Some civilians offer careful nods. Others just watch in silence. A few look wary, eyes shadowed by the uncertainty of war, by memories of occupation or bombardment. You understand it. Soldiers, no matter their flag, are symbols of upheaval. A quirky tidbit pops into your mind. Some World War II soldiers attempted to bridge cultural gaps with small gifts, chewing gum, chocolate, matches, or cigarettes. Chocolate was basically diplomatic currency. You see it now, one guy hands a chocolate bar to a child who beams like he just received the crown jewels. Your unit pauses briefly near the town square while officers consult maps. While waiting, you notice a handful of locals offering small items: water, scarves, bread. One old man hands you a warm loaf wrapped in cloth. You bow your head slightly in thanks. He says something in a language you don't fully understand, but his tone is kind, soft, grateful, or maybe hopeful. You're not sure, but you understand the humanity in it. Thomas leans in. What'd he say? No clue. Sounded friendly. Let's assume it was friendly. Moments like this make the war feel distant, like it belongs to another version of the world. You see families sweeping steps, pulling carts, patching windows, trying to restore some sense of normal life. You realize they're surviving their own version of the war, just as difficult, just as uncertain. Historians still argue whether soldiers and civilians bonded more through kindness or necessity. But walking through this small town, you feel the truth. People connect because they have to. Because fear shrinks the world, and kindness expands it again. Your officer signals to move out, and the column begins to march. As you pass the last row of homes, a woman with flour-dusted hands presses a little cloth bundle into your palm. Inside, 2 small cookies. You blink. For me? She nods once and pats your arm. You feel something warm knot in your chest. Thomas whispers, If you don't share those, I'm telling the sergeant you took civilian bribes. You roll your eyes. Fine. 1 each. Bless you. You keep walking, and soon the village fades behind you. Its smells, its warmth, its fragile normalcy swallowed by the Rosenta. Open fields once more. The war presses close again. But something feels different. Lighter. Like you've carried a little piece of that town with you. Like the echoes of daily life, brooms, ovens, laughter, even uncertainty, slipped into your pack alongside your gear. You realize, this is why soldiers cling so tightly to small kindnesses. They're reminders that the world isn't just uniforms and trenches. That life continues, stubbornly, beautifully, even in war. Your boots crunch on the gravel. The line stretches out in front of you, and you keep moving carrying breadcrumbs, cookie crumbs, and the memory of children laughing as you pass. Night falls slowly, almost reluctantly, as if the sky itself doesn't want to surrender the last scraps of daylight. You feel it creeping in, the subtle shift from blue to charcoal, the cooling air brushing your neck, the way every sound suddenly carries a little farther. Night in World War II is its own creature, a long, stretching thing with sharp edges and soft shadows. And you, whether you like it or not, have to learn how to live inside it. Your unit returns to camp just as the last orange streaks fade behind the trees. Lanterns flicker to life, throwing warm circles of light across the ground. Men move quietly now, voices dropping to low murmurs automatically. Night is the part of the day where everyone pretends not to be on edge, even though every single one of you absolutely is. You drop your pack near your tent and take a slow breath. Your muscles throb from marching. Your feet ache. Your shoulders feel like 2 bricks wrapped in canvas. But it's the mental weight that begins to settle the awareness that darkness changes everything. The world shrinks to whatever your eyes can barely see. Feels like the night gets longer every day. Thomas mutters beside you, tugging at his boots. You nod. Because it does. He frowns. That's not comforting. Wasn't trying to be. He grins in the dim light. Fair enough. You both settle near the edge of camp with your backs against a fallen tree, watching shadows pool between the tents. Someone a few yards away lights a cigarette, the ember glowing bright red for a moment before dimming again. Another man hums quietly, some tune from home, barely audible. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. Many World War II soldiers dreaded the night more than the day. Visibility dropped. Sounds became ambiguous. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig could be anything: enemy patrol, local wildlife, or just your imagination staging a coup. Fatigue didn't help. Darkness fed uncertainty, and uncertainty fed fear. Even if no one wanted to admit it, you feel it now, the heightened awareness. The prickle on your skin when a breeze moves through the trees, the way your ears strain for any unusual sound, the tension settling between your shoulders like a cat preparing to pounce. Your foxhole from earlier looks twice as foreboding, now, crouched beneath the shadows, like a mouth waiting to swallow you. You toss a rock into it to make sure nothing alive crawled inside during the day. No movement. Good. The last thing you need is a night roommate with 8 legs. Across camp, Jonesy whispers, "Who wants to place bets on who screams first when an owl hoots?" "Not funny," someone replies. "It's a little funny." You smirk. The humor helps. Night demands humor. Without it, silence turns heavy. A quirky tidbit rises to the surface. Some soldiers stuffed cotton in their ears at night to block out the bombardment of tiny sounds. Others insisted that was suicidal, you had to hear everything. Some even tied strings to their helmets or rifles so vibrations would wake them if someone approached. Historians still argue whether these improvised alarm systems ever actually worked, or if they were more psychological comfort than practical defense. You shift your position and look up. The stars reveal themselves, slowly tiny pinpricks of light through drifting clouds. They look peaceful, indifferent, like the sky doesn't care about wars or foxholes or ration coffee. It just keeps shining, quietly minding its own business. Thomas leans closer. "You ever think about home more at night?" You nod. "Yeah, daytime's too busy to think. Night, you can't stop thinking." "Same," he says softly. Your mind drifts uninvited but inevitable to kitchens you haven't seen in months, warm beds, people who never even imagined you could be sitting under a foreign sky, listening to the creak of tree branches and wondering whether you'll sleep at all. Homesickness doesn't punch you in the face out here. It creeps in gently, sliding under your skin when you're tired enough to let your guard down. The night grows deeper. Someone stumbles through camp and trips over a crate. A half-dozen quiet curses follow. A ripple of laughter moves through the men, low, tired, but genuine. You all cling to little things like that. The sergeant walks by, shadows stretching long in the lantern glow. "Lights out soon," he says quietly. "Keep it tight. Stay alert." You nod. Alertness is easy to promise, harder to maintain, but you try. You crawl into your foxhole, arranging your gear, adjusting your rifle so it's within reach. Your jacket rustles as you settle into the cold earth. You can hear Thomas settling into his own spot a few feet away, shifting, muttering, probably wrestling his blanket. "Hey," he whispers. "Yeah? Wake me if I stop breathing." You blink. "Why would you stop breathing?" He shrugs in the dark. "Just in case." You laugh softly. "Sure. Same for me? Deal." You lie back, staring upward. The night wraps around you like a thin blanket present, but not warm. You focus on your breathing. The distant hum of insects, the soft murmur of a soldier talking in his sleep, the faint clang of a pot swaying in the wind. Historians still debate whether soldiers slept deeply or barely at all. You think it varied. Some nights exhaustion knocked you out instantly. Other nights your mind refused to shut off no matter how tired your body was. Tonight feels like one of those restless nights. It stretches on, long and uneven, every moment balancing between calm and fear, every sound a question. But somehow, in that fragile balance, you drift. Not quite asleep, not quite awake, just suspended. In morning hasn't arrived yet, but comfort isn't invited anyway. You wake with a stiff neck, a cold spine, and a foxhole that has magically gathered an impressive amount of dampness overnight. You sit up slowly, brush mud from your sleeve, and mutter something unprintable under your breath. But then, that tiny thing happens. The universe offers you a momentary comfort. Thomas materializes beside your foxhole, holding something between two fingers like it's a sacred relic. "Dry sock?" he says. Your eyes widen. "Where did you steal that?" "Trade secret." You grab it reverently. "This is beautiful." "I know," he says, sighing. "I almost cried when I found it. Because in World War II, a dry sock is practically spiritual, a miracle wrapped in wool, a blessing from above, delivered by supply on rare occasions, and by luck on even rarer ones. You strip off the soggy horror currently suffocating your foot, slide on the dry sock, and feel a shiver of pure bliss. Your toes actually wriggle. You feel human again briefly, but profoundly. A mainstream historical fact nudges you. World War II commanders famously drilled foot care into soldiers. Change your socks, dry your socks, worship your socks. A soldier with bad feet was a soldier who couldn't march, fight, or run. And so socks became precious, not just clothing, but survival gear. You stretch your legs, flex your toes, and rise from the foxhole like a man reborn. The sun has barely crested the horizon, but the world is already stirring. Someone stokes a tiny fire. Someone else curses as he steps into a puddle. Another soldier unwraps a small chocolate bar left over from a ration pack and eats it slowly, eyes closed, savoring each faintly waxy bite. "Breakfast of champions," he whispers. You wander toward the fire, hands outstretched toward its thin warmth. The smoke smells like wet wood and determination. Someone hands you a metal cup filled with something resembling coffee. You sip it. It tastes like burnt tree bark mixed with opportunity. Perfect. "Better than yesterday," you say. "Everything's better than yesterday," another soldier replies. "Yesterday was an emotional crime." The group chuckles, the sound soft in the morning frost. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some soldiers claimed that warming their hands over a helmet filled with heated stones worked better than gloves. Others used socks as makeshift mittens. One infantryman insisted that clutching a warm can of beans was his personal self-care ritual. Historians still argue whether this constitutes innovation or desperation. You take another sip of coffee as a faint light spreads across camp. The rising sun paints everything gold: tents, helmets, rifles, faces. For a brief moment, the entire camp looks peaceful, even beautiful, like a world paused. You sit on a crate and watch the scene, the men chatting, yawning, stretching. One soldier sits whittling a piece of wood, shaping it into something that might be a bird or might be a badly designed potato. Another reads half a newspaper he's carried for 3 weeks, its edges frayed beyond recognition. Then Thomas returns with something extraordinary, a piece of toast. Actual toast. "Where did you get that?" You demand. He grins. "Befriended the cook." "How?" "Complimented his beans." You stare at him. "You liar." "Absolutely," he says. "But it worked." He breaks the toast in half and hands you a piece. It's stale, slightly burnt, and the crunch sounds like someone cracking a bone, but to you, it tastes like heaven. Warmth spreads through your chest that has nothing to do with temperature. You lean back, letting the sun just barely touch your face. Comfort, real comfort, is rare out here. You learn to collect it in small handfuls. A warm drink, a dry sock, a joke from a friend, a bite of toast, a letter in your pocket, a cleanish shirt, a quiet morning. They're tiny things, insignificant things, but they stack together. They hold you upright. Historians still argue whether these small comforts played a measurable role in morale. You know the truth. They weren't small at all. They were survival just packaged in everyday moments. A soft breeze moves through camp, lifting the edges of tents and brushing your hair. You close your eyes for a second, letting it pass over you, letting it settle your thoughts. Today will bring its own trials. Maybe marching, maybe digging, maybe fear, maybe all three. But right now, in the glow of a rising sun, with warm toast and warmer company, you have something almost luxurious. A brief pause. A breath. A reminder that you are still alive. You savor it. Because in war, comfort isn't guaranteed, but when it finds you even for a minute, you hold it tight. The strange, stretching quiet of a World War II night. Your morning calm lasts. Well, about as long as calm ever lasts out here. Which is to say, not long. Because just as the sun fully crests the tree line, and you're beginning to feel vaguely optimistic about the day, A familiar sound sweeps across camp, low voices trading rumors like baseball cards. Rumors spread in the army faster than coffee rations disappear. Sometimes they're harmless, sometimes they're wild, sometimes they're just yesterday's rumor wearing a new hat. But they always travel at lightning speed. You wander toward a small crowd gathered near a supply truck. A few soldiers huddle in a semicircle, whispering like they're planning a heist. Thomas waves you over with a look that says, "You absolutely need to hear this nonsense." "We moving out today?" one soldier asks. Another shrugs. "Heard we're getting air support." "No. No," a third insists. "We're going to be reassigned to a quiet sector." A fourth leans in dramatically. "I heard, swear to God, that we're getting hot showers." The group gasps. Someone mutters, "Don't joke about that. That's sacred." You cross your arms. "Okay, what's the actual rumor?" Jonesy, the unit's self-appointed minister of rumors, lifts a hand. "Gentlemen, I have received intel from a very reliable source." Thomas whispers. "Does he mean himself?" "Yes," you whisper back. Jonesy clears his throat. "Word is we might be moving tonight. Destination unknown. But possibly supplies from HQ." Everyone narrows their eyes. Supplies? Like what? Real food? Blankets? Coffee that tastes like something other than sadness? Jonesy nods gravely. "Better. Socks." You stare at him. "Socks. Socks," he repeats. "Wool. Fresh. Unissued. Untouched by human misery." A reverent silence falls over the group. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. World War II units ran on rumors as much as they ran on orders. Isolation, fear, and boredom turned hearsay into currency. Soldiers speculated endlessly about upcoming movements, reinforcements, mail, food, enemy positions, anything to fill the void of uncertainty. Command rarely confirmed or denied anything early, so imagination stepped in. Today, imagination is thriving. Another soldier pipes up. "I heard we're rotating out of this sector soon." Someone else laughs. "I heard we're staying forever." A third says, "My cousin's friend's brother's neighbor's barber said the Germans are retreating." "Your cousin's friend's brother's neighbor's barber?" Very reliable source. The whole group nods, not because they believe him, but because the chain of informants is so absurd it must contain cosmic truth. You sit on an overturned ammo crate, listening to the speculations swirl like smoke. Theories bounce around. "We'll be back home by Christmas." "We won't be home until next Christmas." "We'll stay here 2 days." "We'll stay here 2 months." "We're getting new boots." "We're losing our boots." "Our sergeant is being promoted." "Our sergeant is immortal." The last rumor gets a murmur of agreement. Honestly, not impossible. A quirky tidbit flashes through your mind. Some divisions became famous for ridiculous rumors. One unit believed the army was developing chocolate-flavored gasoline. Another thought they would be issued mosquito armor. One group insisted they saw a general disguised as a private, just for fun. Historians still argue whether half these stories were jokes or coping mechanisms. Probably both. You lean toward Thomas. "Which rumor do you want to be true?" He doesn't hesitate. "Hot showers." "Same." Followed by socks. "Obviously." Someone nearby adds, "I'd settle for a day without mud." You all laugh. Mud is eternal, unchanging, a geological constant. Only fools challenge mud. The sergeant eventually strides by and glances at the group. He raises an eyebrow. "What's all this?" Jonesy stands at attention. "Sir, we're conducting, field intelligence gathering." The sergeant stares at him. "You mean gossip?" Jonesy hesitates. "Tactical gossip?" The sergeant sighs and keeps walking. That's basically approval. You stay with the group a while longer, letting the rumors swirl around you, feeling the strange comfort they bring. Rumors give shape to the shapeless. They fill silence. They give you something to anticipate, dread, or laugh about. Historians still debate whether rumors helped or hurt morale, but you know the truth. Out here, rumors aren't about accuracy, they're about connection. About filling uncertainty with imagination instead of fear. About creating tiny stories in a place where big ones are often frightening. Finally, Thomas nudges you. "So what do you think? Any of this true?" You shrug. "Probably none of it." "That's what I figured," he says. "But it's fun to pretend." You stand, brushing dirt from your pants. If we get socks tonight, I'm starting my own rumor about it. Oh, yeah, you say, grinning. I'll claim I predicted it. He laughs. Historians will argue about that one. The two of you head toward the edge of camp, the whispers fading behind you. The rumors aren't answers. They're not even reliable. But they make the waiting easier, the uncertainty softer, the war a little less sharp. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need. The rumor storm eventually drifts into the background, thinning out like smoke in open air. Men disperse to their duties, some still whispering about socks, some daydreaming about hot showers, one insisting he knows a guy who can confirm everything. You shake your head, amused. But the moment doesn't last long because the day has one more shift to make. A quiet kind of stillness settles over camp, not the eerie, edgy silence from earlier. This one feels gentler, like the world is catching its breath. You take advantage of the lull and wander toward the supply tent to return a tool you borrowed mostly because if you don't, the quartermaster will hunt you down with the precision of a bloodhound. But halfway there, something unexpected tugs your attention sideways. A tiny interaction you might have missed if you weren't paying attention. A soldier you barely know, quiet guy, always keeping to himself, is sitting alone on an overturned crate, staring at a broken strap-on, his pack. His shoulders are slumped, his face tense with frustration. He fiddles with the torn end, trying to knot it, failing, trying again. Before you can think, before you can second-guess yourself, you walk over and crouch down beside him. "You need a hand?" you ask. He blinks in surprise, like he wasn't expecting anyone to notice. Yeah, he says softly. "It ripped earlier. Can't get it tied right." You take the strap, examine it, then pull a small bit of spare cord from your own gear, something you've been hoarding for months because string solves everything. You thread it through the torn ends, knotting it firmly, then pull tight. The strap holds. "There," you say. "Should last a while." He stares at it, then at you. A slow smile appears, small, quiet, but real. "Thanks," he murmurs. "Really?" You nod. "We've all been there." He chuckles. "Yeah, guess we have. It's a tiny thing, a small act, but it feels important." A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. Soldiers in World War II often relied on these small acts of mutual support. Not dramatic rescues, not heroic speeches, just steady kindness, fixing gear, sharing rations, offering cigarettes, helping write letters, patching uniforms. These gestures stitched the fabric of units together more tightly than any formal discipline could. As you stand, Thomas appears from behind a tent flap with a puzzled look. "What'd you just do?" "Helped fix a strap." Thomas raises an eyebrow. "Why? You charging him for that?" "Thought about it," you say. "But I'm trying this new thing called being a decent human." He makes a face. "Weird. Don't think it'll catch on." You're about to reply when you notice something else across camp. Two soldiers rough around the edges, always bickering like brothers, are kneeling beside a small campfire, cooking something in a dented tin pot. You expect the usual stew, but the smell, drifting your way, is sweet. You wander over. "What's that?" you ask. One of them shrugs. "Found some flour, traded for sugar, borrowed a pan." The other beams. "We're making donuts." Your jaw drops. "Donuts. In a war zone." "These hands," he says proudly, "are blessed." You stare as they flip small lumps of fried dough in sizzling fat. The aroma is ridiculous, warm, comforting, the closest thing to home you've smelled in months. They hand you one without hesitation. You take a bite. It's misshapen, uneven, slightly burnt, and absolutely perfect. "Holy hell," you whisper. "This is heaven." "I know," the cook says smugly. "We should open a bakery after this," his friend snorts. "Yeah, we'll call it Foxhole Fried." You nearly choke laughing. A quirky tidbit flashes. Some World War II units were known for cooking projects: makeshift ovens built from fuel cans, improvised grills made from scrap metal. One division even created a tiny cake to celebrate a lieutenant's birthday, using rationed chocolate and crushed biscuits. Historians still argue whether it tasted good or just less bad. You sit with the two donut artists for a few minutes, enjoying the warmth of the fire and the rare luxury of sweetness. When another soldier wanders by looking defeated, They hand him a donut too, no questions, no payment, no hesitation, just kindness. As the man walks away smiling, Thomas leans toward you and says quietly, "You ever notice how the smallest things hit the hardest out here?" You nod slowly. "Yeah. The world's falling apart," he continues. "But someone hands you a donut and suddenly it's okay for 5 minutes. 5 good minutes, you agree." The light shifts as afternoon thins into early evening. Men clean rifles, write letters, play cards, mend uniforms. The soft hum of everyday tasks blends into a gentle background murmur, and scattered through it all are little acts of humanity, quiet, ordinary, beautiful. A guy gives half his rations to someone who missed chow. Another helps a friend rewrap a bandage. Someone lends out a treasured pencil so a letter can be finished. 2 men share a blanket while airing out their gear. One soldier, exhausted beyond belief, nods off while sitting upright, and someone else gently adjusts his helmet so it won't fall off. Historians still argue whether these small gestures affected the outcome of battles. But you think they affected something more important, the outcome of people. Because war tries to break you in loud, explosive ways, but kindness repairs you in quiet ones. You stand, stretching your back, feeling the day settle warmly on your shoulders. The fire crackles. The donut taste lingers. The repaired strap you tied earlier looks sturdy. You breathe in, slow, steady, grateful. This war is long. This war is brutal. But these moments, these tiny, shining acts of kindness tucked into muddy days, they're what keep you whole. As daylight thins into a grey, sleepy haze, the camp begins winding down in that slow, uneven way it always does. Half routine, half exhaustion. You go through the motions alongside everyone else, stacking gear, brushing mud from your pants, tightening straps, loosening others, taking inventory, even when you already know exactly what's missing. But at some point, somewhere between straightening your bedroll and staring too long at nothing, you feel your mind slip into that strange liminal zone soldiers know all too well. Not panic, not calm, just the edge. A thin, wavering space between functioning and floating. You sit on a crate, elbows on your knees, and stare at the ground. The dirt blurs a little. Your thoughts go fuzzy around the edges, like they're wrapped in wool. It's not dramatic, not even uncomfortable. It's just this odd, drifting sensation, your brain running on fumes and imagination. Thomas flops down beside you with a groan. "I think my thoughts are melting," he says. "Mine left hours ago," you reply. "They'll send a postcard if they make it somewhere nice." He squints. "Where do thoughts vacation?" You shrug. "Someplace with food that isn't in a can." He hums agreement, then leans back, staring at the sky. You join him. The clouds drift lazily above, smudging the fading blue. Shapes emerge, faces, animals, weird blobs. Your mind automatically tries to decode them, desperate for something to latch onto. But the shapes shift too quickly, like your brain doesn't have the energy to keep up. A mainstream historical fact flickers through your fogged thoughts. Prolonged stress and exhaustion in World War II often produced a kind of mental drift. Soldiers described feeling detached, floaty, outside themselves. Not quite dissociation, not quite sleep, but something in between. A coping mechanism as old as conflict itself. Your head tilts slightly to the side. Sounds distort a little. Boots. Crunching gravel. A spoon tapping against a tin cup. Someone coughing. Someone laughing. Everything feels far away. Even your own voice sounds distant when you murmur. Feels like time stretching. Thomas nods. Feels like my brain's on a 3-second delay. Luxury, you say. Mine's on a full minute. He chuckles weakly. We're doing great. Nearby, Jonesy is telling a story with way too much enthusiasm for someone this tired, about a fish he supposedly caught with nothing but a piece of string and a threatening stare. You hear the words, but they slide over you like mist. Not uninteresting, just unreal. Your eyes drift to a tree at the edge of camp, tall and skeletal in the fading light. For a moment, it looks like something else, like a person, or a tower, or the mast of a ship. Your imagination overlays possibilities onto the branches. It's not hallucination. It's the brain trying to make the world more coherent than it currently feels. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some World War II soldiers reported seeing odd shapes or hearing phantom sounds during long stretches of fatigue. Not supernatural, just the brain improvising when overwhelmed. One soldier swore he heard his mother calling his name from inside a ration crate. Another thought he saw a cat wearing a helmet. Historians still argue if exhaustion or wishful thinking played the bigger role. You blink slowly, returning to the present. The tree is just a tree. The shadows are just shadows. But for a second, your mind tried to rewrite them into something softer, something familiar. Thomas nudges your arm. You drifting again? Yeah. Where'd you go? You shrug. Somewhere without mud. He grins. Sounds fake. You sit in silence for a while. Good silence. Heavy silence. The kind that doesn't demand anything from you. Your mind continues to hover, half present, half wandering. You think about home, not clearly. More like flashes. Hands on a coffee mug. A doorway. Someone's laughter. A streetlight glowing at dusk. These images don't feel like memories exactly, they feel like wishes wearing memory masks. The wind shifts, cool and soft. You shiver, though not entirely from cold. The world around you feels both too big and too small, too loud and too quiet. Historians still debate what constant stress does to the brain, whether it rewires you, whether the drifting moments are warning signs or survival tactics. You think it's both. Out here, your mind adapts however it can. A figure walks by and hands you a piece of gum. You blink, he shrugs. You look like you need it. You smile faintly. Thanks. You unwrap it and chew slowly. The minty taste pulls your mind back a little, enough to breathe more steadily. As darkness deepens, lanterns flicker to life around camp. Shadows lengthen and merge. Your body stays in place, but your mind still floats lighter than your bones, heavier than air. You whisper, "Hey, Thomas." "Yeah? Does your brain ever feel fuzzy?" "All the time," he says. "Why?" "Just checking." Welcome to the club. The two of you sit there until the cold creeps into your jackets and the drifting feeling settles into something you can manage. Not gone, not fixed, but calmer. Eventually you stand. Stretch. Breathe. The world sharpens by a millimeter. Enough. The war continues. Your thoughts wobble. You move anyway. Night has settled fully now. A deep velvet blanket stretched across the sky, pinpricked with faint stars that peek through drifting clouds. Camp is quieter than usual, no drills, no marching orders, no sudden alarms. Just the low murmur of men settling into their routines and the soft hiss of distant wind brushing through trees. But tonight feels different. Heavier. Like the air itself knows something is shifting. You're rolling up your blanket when the news trickles in, not shouted, not dramatic, just carried by whispers that move through camp faster than fire. The front is turning. The tide's shifting. We're winning ground. You hear it once, then twice, then from someone else entirely. You frown, glancing at Thomas. "You hearing this?" He nods slowly, eyes narrowing. "Yeah, but is it real?" That question sits in your chest like a stone, because out here, good news is almost painful. It's easier to doubt it. Easier to assume someone misheard, misunderstood, or invented hope out of thin air. But then an officer walks by, with an unmistakable expression, tight, serious, but carrying a flicker of something rare, something like relief, trying not to smile. And suddenly, the whispers start to feel real. Your mind spins. Victory. Not the end of the war, not yet, but the shift. The long-awaited turning of a wheel that has crushed you, lifted you, and rolled back again 1,000 times. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. On multiple fronts in World War II, there were moments Normandy, the bulge, the Pacific island pushes, when soldiers felt the tide turning before they ever saw it officially confirmed. The signs were subtle, shorter resistance, captured enemy positions, rumors of retreat. These turning points were surreal. Surreal in a way that didn't feel like triumph, just disbelief. You sit down slowly, your knees suddenly weak. Victory, real victory, sounds too big, too impossible to fit inside your tired skull. Thomas lets out a long breath. I don't know how to feel." "Same," you whisper, because here's the truth no one ever tells you about victory in war. It doesn't feel like fireworks, or parades, or triumphant music swelling in the background. It feels like numbness, like confusion, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because danger doesn't vanish overnight, loss doesn't reverse itself, and your body doesn't magically stop bracing. You stand and wander to the edge of camp, the cool air filling your lungs. The night, seems almost too quiet now. Even the crickets have softened their song. A couple of soldiers sit nearby, talking in hushed voices. "You think this means we get to go home soon?" one asks. A long pause. "Doubt it," the other replies. "But maybe it means fewer bad days." The first man nods slowly. "I'd take that." Further away, someone else laughs a short, disbelieving sound. "If we really are winning ground, I swear I'm going to sleep for 3 days straight." Another soldier answers, "Yeah? I'm going to eat until I explode." You smile faintly. No one is celebrating. Not yet. They don't know how. They don't trust the feeling. A quirky tidbit rises. Some World War II soldiers wrote letters home after big victories that sounded oddly calm, almost detached. One wrote, "We advanced today. Everyone says it's a good sign." It doesn't feel like a good sign. It just feels strange. Historians still argue whether this emotional flatness came from shock, exhaustion, or the mind's attempt to protect itself from disappointment. You understand that now. Thomas joins you at the tree line, hands in his pockets. "Crazy, isn't it?" he murmurs. "What is?" "The idea that we might actually win this thing." You exhale. Feels unreal. "Yeah," he says, "like someone handed me a dream and told me to carry it carefully." You both fall silent, listening to the distant night sounds. Your breath fogs in the cool air. Your hands tremble slightly, not with fear, but with something harder to recognize. Something like hope wearing a disguise. Thomas nudges you gently. "Hey, if it's true, if the tide's turning." "Yeah? What's the first thing you want to do when you get home?" The question hits you right in the chest. You blink, throat tightening unexpectedly. You pause, searching for the words. "I want to sit on my porch, in a chair, a real chair, with real cushions, and do absolutely nothing." Thomas laughs softly. "That sounds perfect. What about you?" "I want to sleep in, then eat breakfast that isn't served with a ladle." You both chuckle in the quiet darkness. The night stretches around you, gentler now, less threatening, but still full of weight. You sense the truth sitting beneath everything. Victory doesn't erase what's been lost, or what's been endured. It simply opens the door to a different future, one you haven't dared to picture until now. You breathe in deeply, exhale slowly. Historians still argue whether soldiers felt joy or sorrow when the turning point came. You realize it's neither. It's both. And it's something else entirely. A fragile, cautious relief. A beginning that doesn't yet feel like one. You look out over the dark horizon, where the faintest outline of tomorrow waits. The tide is turning. You feel it, but you don't quite believe it yet. Not fully. Not safely. Not until you're home. Daylight returns, with a softness that feels almost suspicious. The air is cool, gentle, the kind that brushes your skin without demanding anything from you. It's the kind of morning that, months ago, you would have called ordinary. But now here, after everything, it feels like a miracle wearing very plain clothes. Word has spread, rumors becoming reports, reports becoming orders. Your unit is rotating out, not for a day, not for a week, but for good. You're going home. The news doesn't hit all at once. It trickles in slowly, the way dawn seeps through a window. You keep expecting someone to shout that it's a mistake, that the orders were misread, that you're being yanked back into the grind before your brain can process any of it. But no one yells, no one corrects, no one takes it back. Instead, the sergeant gathers everyone in a loose circle and says, in his typical understated way, "Pack your gear. We're done here. Done. Here." 2 words that feel too simple for the weight they carry. Thomas looks at you, stunned, eyes glossy with disbelief. "Is this real?" he whispers. You nod slowly. "I think so." He exhales a long, shaky breath. "Damn." You both stand there for a moment, absorbing it. Not celebrating, just absorbing. Letting the truth settle into the cracks war carved inside you. Packing feels surreal. You move through your tent like a ghost, folding your blanket, stowing your canteen, checking your rifle one last time. Every object feels like it belongs to another life. A heavier life. A harder one. You run your fingers along the edge of your helmet and realize you don't know what to do with your hands without it. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. Many World War II soldiers reported a strange emotional numbness when the war ended. Relief tangled with guilt, joy mixed with disbelief. The transition back to civilian life wasn't clean, it was messy, confusing, and sometimes overwhelming. You feel it now, that mix of light and heavy. Hope, braided with fatigue. A few tents down, Jonesy is stuffing his pack with unnecessary treasures. 3 rocks, a piece of driftwood, a bent spoon he swears is lucky. These are important artifacts, he insists, Smithsonian level. No one wants your spoon, a soldier tells him. You say that now, Jonesy replies, but just wait. You smile. Even this nonsense feels precious. You sling your pack onto your shoulder. It feels lighter than it ever has. Not physically, if anything, it's heavier. But something about carrying it now feels different. Like the weight isn't sinking you anymore. Like it's just weight. As your unit lines up, locals from the nearby village gather at a distance, smiling, waving, handing out apples, bread, scarves. One elderly man shakes your hand with both of his, eyes bright with gratitude. You don't speak his language, but the meaning is crystal clear. Thomas nudges you. Think they'll miss us? You grin. Definitely not at mealtime, he snorts. Absolutely not. The trucks rumble to life, engines coughing, sputtering, then settling into a steady growl. One by one, you climb aboard. It feels wrong. Strange. Like you're leaving a piece of yourself behind. But also, like you're reclaiming something you lost long before you arrived. The ride is long and bumpy. Trees blur past. Fields stretch out like open palms. You watch it all with an intensity that surprises you, as if memorizing the landscape might anchor the shifting inside your chest. Thomas leans back, eyes half closed. You ready? For what? For being normal again? You stare ahead. I'm not sure I remember what normal is. Me neither, he whispers, but I'd like to try. The truck continues down the dusty road, carrying you toward a future you haven't yet imagined. You think of home porches, sidewalks, warm kitchens, beds that don't move, silence that isn't threatening, faces you haven't seen in what feels like several lifetimes. You also think of the men around you, Jonesy with his spoon, Thomas with his jokes, the quiet soldier with the torn strap, the donut chefs, the ones who laughed, the ones who cried, the ones who didn't get to ride home beside you. Historians still argue how much war changes a person. You know the answer. Completely. Quietly. Permanently. You step off the truck hours later onto solid ground that feels almost suspiciously still. No shell bursts, no drills, no alarms, just life. Normal, unremarkable, beautiful life. As you walk forward, pack slung over one shoulder, boots hitting pavement instead of mud, you realize something soft but certain. You left this place as a soldier. You return as someone new, someone heavier with memory, lighter with hope, someone who knows the cost of quiet, someone who understands the value of small kindnesses, someone who won't ever see the world the same way again. You take one more breath of the cold evening air. Let it fill you. Let it settle. Because the war is behind you now. And ahead, finally, unbelievably, is home. And now, as you step away from the noise, away from the miles of marching and the mud-soaked foxholes, let everything inside you begin to soften. Let the tension in your shoulders ease down, gently, like heavy snow settling on quiet ground. You've walked through long nights, and cold mornings, and days that stretched further than you thought they could. But now, picture yourself sinking slowly into a warm, familiar space. Maybe a bed you haven't seen in so long, or a porch chair creaking softly beneath you in the late evening breeze. Let your breathing slow, unhurried, natural. Each inhale a little deeper, each exhale a little calmer. The war, the noise, the heavy gear, they all fall away as if someone's dimming the world around you, gently, tenderly, with steady hands. You feel the weight lift from your chest, just a little at first, then fully, like a burden that finally understands it's allowed to leave. There's no mud here, no marching orders, no cold wind biting at your skin, just quiet, just warmth, just peace gliding in, soft as candlelight. Imagine the sky above you, wide, open, endlessly patient. The kind of sky that waits for you to breathe, to rest, to remember that you're safe now. Let your thoughts drift slowly, loosely like smoke rising from a small fire. You don't need to chase them. don't need to solve them. Just let them float, gentle and far away. Because right now, in this moment, you are exactly where you need to be. Warm, safe, drifting toward rest. And as your eyes grow heavy and the world grows soft around the edges, know that you've come home.